I've been so fortunate to be around the most brilliant, the most curious, the most innovative people in the world. And those are 3-year-olds.
Hello, I'm General Alan Salisbury, host of CODA Support's Profiles in Service podcast. This podcast series was inaugurated as part of our 10th anniversary celebration. In this series, we explore the many dimensions of service: service to the nation, service to our communities, and service to humanity. Our guest today on Profiles in Service is Daris McInnis, currently a doctoral candidate at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. As you will soon see, doctoral candidate is only one of his current activities. Welcome to the podcast, Daris.
General Salisbury, thank you so much for having me here. It really is an honor. Thank you so much.
We're pleased to have you. Just to go through the early stages of your life quickly, you were born in 1986. That makes you a full-fledged member of the millennial generation. And you were born in Flint, Michigan. Your father, while you were a young child, joined the Army. You moved many times, finally settling down kind of in Texas. And you ended up going to Angelo State University and got your bachelor's degree in business administration in 2008. Am I correct on all of that?
That is correct. That's correct. I had to look up and think oh, okay, yeah. This is all correct.
Now, at that point, you had your degree, you enlisted in the Army. Did your father's service in the Army influence that decision? What caused you to do that?
I first want to just start by saying thank you again for the opportunity to be here. And all of that is correct. Funny story about joining the military. When I was in high school, I told my parents, "Oh, I would never do this. Dad's crazy. I would never join the military. This isn't even on my radar." It was just something that was not a thing for me at all until my junior year of college. I realized that I loved business and it was great. And I had a really good experience at Angelo State studying business, but I realized that business wasn't quite what I wanted to do with my life. And I began entertaining the idea of giving back through military service. And my dad's service actually, when I look back on my life and thought about all the opportunities and everything that my dad's service has afforded us, and just looking at him for his bravery, he's deployed many times and he's sacrificed so much for my siblings and I to have a good life. So ultimately it did impact me in a way where I said, well, okay, I'll backtrack a little on my statement of saying that I would never do it. And it ended up being the best decision that I could have made.
Service kind of runs in families, we find, and I thought that might be the case for you, and it sounds like that was. You became one of the less than 1% of Americans who put on that uniform to defend the country. You applied for and were selected for OCS and became a logistics officer. Your first assignment took you overseas as a brand new second lieutenant. Platoon leader, I gather. And I think you found that a rather humbling experience, though, to suddenly find yourself in charge of the fate of something like 88 people in your first platoon. How did you cope with that?
So when I joined the Army, there were many transitions happening, not just in my life, but also in America. We had elected a new president. We were going through an economic crisis. So, and I had just graduated from college. I was 22. I'd never had any sort of management position or management role at all. And I had gone through so much training. This was the year when Bullet 2 was still a thing for officers, where after you went to OBC, after you commissioned, you had gone to Bullock 2 with other folks who commissioned either in West Point or in ROTC. And we all did all of our tactical training together. And then you went to OBC. And then I was in, I think, the very second class of ordnance officers who trained at Fort Lee as opposed to Aberdeen Proving Ground. So there were just so many transitions happening, but I had the confidence in saying, well, if I can do all of this, I can certainly lead a platoon, of however many people. And I remember going to my first duty station at Camp Casey, and I met with the battalion commander at the time, Colonel John Harris, whom I'm still connected to today. And he's one of the best leaders I've ever met in my life. He said to me, so you are practically going to be an FSB commander. I know that you don't have much experience. I know that this is your first assignment in the Army, but you'll be in charge of the cooks. You'll be in charge of the medics. You'll be in charge of the maintenance folks. You'll be in charge of the chaplain assistants. So good luck. You you have a great support system around you, and I'm always here if you need me. And it was a very steep learning curve because I just had to learn so much so fast. I didn't know how to lead people. I just didn't know the protocols of my job. There were so many different things that I had to manage at one time. And as a new lieutenant in the Army, it was exciting but frightening. And I will say my NCOs and my soldiers really, really, really stepped in and really made it a successful turn as a support platoon leader. They taught me everything, all of them. Sergeant McLaughlin, LeBron, all of them. They were. I'm still connected with them to this day, and they were very patient with me, and they taught me everything that I knew.
Even though I'm a West Pointer, I was too a brand new second lieutenant, and we were well trained to latch on to that platoon sergeant and his job. And I think the platoon sergeants really accept this as a responsibility, was to train these new lieutenants so they could be effective leaders. And I think you benefited from that as well. You had a whole range of logistics assignments, and you became a company commander, promoted to captain. I'd like to focus in on Fort Lee in Virginia. And while you were there, you're serving in the military, and that's pretty much a full-time job, as we all know. But yet you found time to volunteer. Can you tell us a little bit about how that opportunity came about and what impact that had on you?
Sure. Giving back was something that I just felt a call to do. It began with, actually, before I started volunteering with Petersburg schools, I was volunteering in Forestville. There's a military academy there, and some friends of mine, we all went up to Forestville to judge some ROTC competitions, which was really, really cool. These were high schoolers out doing like drills, and we had an opportunity to do that. That came from a friend of mine who was looking for volunteers. And then the opportunity to work with schools in the Petersburg area came from my unit. I'd actually gone one weekend with a few people from the company, a few soldiers from the company. We had gone to volunteer at some schools in Petersburg, and we were pretty shocked, quite honestly. I had never imagined schools could lose accreditation based on performance. And we were working with high schoolers to prep them for applying for college. We were helping them with, organizing themselves with time management. And we were getting them to think about what their career goals were down the line. And in that moment is where I really became sort of drawn to education because I just realized that if this was happening in Petersburg, there was a big chance that this was also happening in other areas and around the country, and that's how I also not only got connected with education. I mean, excuse me, with volunteering, but also with education.
So you're taking care of your soldiers, you're taking care of the kids in school, and somehow you also found time to pick up an MBA with an orientation or a concentration in human resources. So uh, you were a pretty busy man in those days.
Thank you.
Um, Now, you left the Army in 2013. You applied for, I gather, and received an Education Pioneers Fellowship. Was it that took you to Crescent City in New Orleans to work with the schools there?
Yes, sir. So it was the inaugural cohort for Ed Pioneers in New Orleans. I was on my way out of the Army, and to be transparent, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have any handle on it. I was like, oh well, I'm just gonna transition out, and someone's gonna find me, and I'm gonna get a good job. And but I knew I wanted to work in education in some capacity, and I had applied for the Education Pioneers Fellowship. A friend of mine actually posted it on Facebook, and I said, "Oh, this sounds cool." And I separated from the Army June 6th. No, June 7th, 2013. The first day of my fellowship with Ed Pioneers was June 13th. No, June 10th, 2013.
Less than a week later.
Oh my goodness. I was like, oh yeah. Actually, yeah, I'd separated Friday, the 7th of June, and I started Monday, the 10th. And so driven from Fort Lee to New Orleans. I was still in my uniform, stopped in Atlanta, changed clothes, and this was like my little first taste of the civilian world. I showed up to New Orleans with my cohort, and I met some amazing, amazing folks. Nicole, Aaron, Harry, all of Thinky, all of these great folks who were also in grad school, but also transitioning into careers in education. And I was linked and paired with Crescent City Schools, where I got to work with Chris Cromwell and Kate Mihawk, and we did a turnaround for one of the charter schools in the Algiers parish, I think it's called. And this was another opportunity to give back just in a different capacity. It's really funny though, like I look at some pictures of us back in New Orleans and I'm still like standing at attention because I was still a soldier. But I really enjoyed my time with Crescent City Schools, and I just love the experience overall.
And you got a lot of experience more on the administrative side than the teaching side there. So you got to see the infrastructure and all of the things that go on behind the scenes to support education. I guess that was pretty good experience. So in 2009, Congress passed the Kennedy Hatch National Service Act, which rejuvenated a number of national service programs that had been going on. And particularly, they added a large number of positions in the AmeriCorps program. And I believe you got into that program. Again, with the Inspired Teaching School. Was that where you served your AmeriCorps service?
Yes, and just to back up just a little bit, when I was doing the fellowship in New Orleans, and thinking about like how I wanted to transition into teaching, it was actually while we were doing some work with working with families, getting them registered for the upcoming school year in 2013. I was reading books with kids while they waited for their parents to talk with administrators around the school, and one parent suggested to me, she was like, you should read books to kids. Actually, I think that you should teach them. I think that you'd be really good at it. And I was like, no, there's no way. But then I gave it some thought, and I actually ended up doing it. I moved from New Orleans to DC and applied for a teaching certification through the Inspired Teaching program, which was started by Aletta Margolis. And in the program, it was a 24-month residency program where we were paired with a lead teacher for our first year, and we were given support, coaching, and we were also getting a master's in teaching. And with that, we did some service projects because we were also AmeriCorps fellows through our service. And so we did some service projects around the city in DC.
And you might tell us about the swearing in ceremony that you participated in into the AmeriCorps program. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That was really cool. So maybe about right after I started the program and I began teaching, we I think Mara, she was one of the program, she's one of the managers we worked with. She sent an email out to people saying, hey, I think for the swearing in, I think the White House is looking for people to give like a reflection on their service and what service means to them. And I submitted a reflection where I talked about transitioning from the military and my plans and to go into teaching. And I was contacted by a person at the White House saying, hi, Daris, we found your story really compelling. Would you like to swear in on the White House lawn with Presidents Obama and Clinton? As if I was going to say no, right?
No brainer. You spent several years in this inspired teaching program, and but in the summer of 2016, you diverted your service to Kenya. Tell us about that experience.
Yes, I after teaching, I taught 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds, and there's an organization called Nairobi Volunteers Services, and I received an email from them, and a friend of mine actually did this program. It wasn't through Nairobi though. It was I think it was IVHQ, and she had done some teaching in Tanzania the year before, and I'd seen an email from IVHQ, and they partner with Nairobi Volunteers Services, and it was for a volunteer opportunity to teach in Kenya at an orphanage. And it was the summer of 2016, and most teachers take the summer off and just kind of rest and rejuvenate and get ready to go back to school. But I really felt, again, I'm always driven by this, like my feelings and like my callings to give back. And I thought that would be a really nice opportunity to see education in a different light without as many resources as we have in the United States. And quite honestly, I was just looking to learn while I was giving back. And I ended up teaching at an orphanage called Grace Community in Kahawa West in Nairobi. And it was an experience like I honestly can't describe. I taught all types of lessons, subjects. It was an experience that I want to do again. It took a lot out of me emotionally. It was just so different than what I was used to, in many different ways. It taught me perseverance. It taught me an experience where people, quite honestly, like the kids at the orphanage were just so resilient, so wonderful, so talented, so brilliant. And the volunteers who came, we all just learned so much. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep it together. I always get a little emotional with talking about the experience. But it was one where I made long lasting friendships again. I always meet, and when you do service with other people, you always tend to connect with folks who are like minded and folks who want to give back. And I've met long lasting friends who also answer the call to give back to others. And that was an experience I will never, ever, ever forget.
Another experience you had that you mentioned just a few minutes ago, that you had been introduced to the Homeless Children's Playtime Project in Washington. Your official title, one of the roles you filled for them, was as a play ranger. Tell us about being a play ranger.
Sure. Being a play ranger. So this was also while I was teaching at the same time in DC. And it was once a week, sometimes twice a week. I volunteered with one of the shelters that they partner with, and it's really just a nice way to bring play into transitional housing spaces. As a play ranger, we showed up and um, we showed up with a plan in mind to work with the kids, but the kids, honestly, they really drove everything. They led everything. We showed up to a play, and at the end of the day, when you're done teaching 3-year-olds, you just want a nice chill experience. Being a play ranger was not it, so I had to get like a second wind of energy. We played games with the kids. We played sports with the kids. We took the kids to the pool during the summertime. We read books with them. We helped them with their homework. I mean, you name it. We really tried to foster a loving, playful, engaging environment for the children. So many of them had experienced trauma and so many things throughout their lives, more than people experience in a lifetime. And so we were able to bring play into their space. It was a pretty easy experience, exhausting, but it was it was a very rewarding experience, though.
So now you're still teaching, you're doing this volunteer work, and once again, you already had an MBA, but you found time to study some more and work towards a master's in early childhood education,
Yes.
which I believe you received in 2016 from Trinity Washington University. How did you work that into your schedule?
Honestly, going to my first duty station and managing so many different things with maintenance, with the dining hall, with the chaplain service, with ammunition, I was forced to learn how to manage my time. You should see my calendar. People laugh at it because it's like I block out and color code time for everything, and I carried that with me when I became a teacher. One of the things that I'm always adamant about, no matter where I am, I will be connected to some sort of volunteer opportunity. And while being a teacher, I was able to make time for um, my babies, as I called them when I was a teacher, um, and planning for that. And I had also really great co-teachers who helped to really um, make that experience a lot easier than if I had done it by myself. And so shout out to Miss Alves, shout out to Miss Christensen, shout out to Miss Butty, Miss Gonzalez, and Mr. Stanley, and also Miss Salisbury, with no relation to General Salisbury. But it was only a once a week commitment, but I did. I'm just a really big stickler for time management, and I think that if there's something that you want to do, and if you have the impetus, if you have the if you're responding to a calling to do something, there's a way for you to make it happen. I think the most important part is taking care of myself, because if I don't take care of myself first, I can't be any good to anyone else.
There you go.
And then after I ensure that I am okay, that's when I'm able to kind of figure out where there's time to give back to others.
Well, your education trajectory is very clear. After 4 years teaching in DC, you made the move to Philadelphia. And I believe that was then primarily focused on getting your doctorate in education. You had three roles right off the bat there in Philadelphia. Once again, you're a research assistant and a doctoral student at University of Pennsylvania. And you're a volunteer for the Free Library of Philadelphia, and you're also on the adjunct faculty of Westchester University of Pennsylvania. Now, I guess that the driving force behind getting your doctorate was your selection for the Tillman Scholar as a Tillman Scholar. Most people probably don't know about that Tillman Scholarship, but you can tell us about it.
Sure. So the Tillman Scholarship was named after Pat Tillman. And we are a group of veterans who are pursuing a degree of some sort, and that we all embody leadership and selfless service. And for that, it is a community of people whom have dedicated their lives to service through the military, and some of whom are actually spouses of the military, or excuse me, spouses of folks in the military. And all of us are connected through service. I'm a 2020 Tillman Scholar, and I've been connected with other scholars in the Philadelphia area and around the world. Also, through that, I was connected through to my friends Emily and Matt, who introduced me to an organization called Action Tank. And we are a community service volunteer, veteran-led organization doing some work out in the community here in Philly. I recently joined this past February, and that's been another way to give back. Some folks who are in the organization are also Tillman Scholars, and that's just been like a little piece of the network with the Tillman community.
I understand your goal is to be a professor of early childhood education now. And all will go well, I'm sure, and you'll receive your doctorate in education this next summer, 2022. Now, you're already on a tenure track as an outstanding faculty member with Westchester. So I would say the odds are very good that you're going to reach that goal of becoming a professor. I do have a question here, though. You seem to be happiest and really in your element when you're actually working with the young kids. As a university professor, how will you satisfy that need?
That's a really great question. One, I think that I will always be connected to volunteer service some kind of way. I've been a volunteer with Philly Reading Coaches since I've come to Philly, and we spend some time after school reading with kids, and the kids who we work with are at varying levels of reading. So it's not anything that's like compensatory or like remedial. This is just an opportunity for kids to do some reading engagement with other people. And so I'll probably always be connected with something similar to that. And beyond that, I've always, I also have aspirations of starting a nonprofit to give other people opportunities to work with young children, very similar to the play opportunities I had with the Homeless Children's Playtime Project. So I'm thinking about doing something like that. And whatever is next for me, I'm absolutely sure that when I retire from that, I will absolutely go back to being a preschool teacher, probably for the rest of my life. It's just a job that I enjoy more than any others.
Well, we've already pointed out that you're a grad student, a volunteer with the Free Public Library on the adjunct faculty. You mentioned that you work with the Action Tank, where you're a volunteer, and I think you're also on the board there. I also have read that you're involved as a reading coach with the Philly group. Another involvement is with the Rodin College House Community Service Community. I think in your spare time, you ought to teach a course in time management, because you seem to have mastered it if you could keep all of these balls in the air as well. A few questions maybe as we move to wrap this up. Looking back on your military service, how would you assess its role in preparing you for what it is that is now your life's calling?
It's a great question.
Is there a commonality between taking care of the troops and taking care of young kids that transfers there at all?
Yes, I think being mission focused, being in the military, we know the mission comes first. It will happen. And so having the mentality that me and my team will do something, like there is no other option, really gave me the sense of goal setting in whatever I did. And with education, when you enter a field like teaching, I think so much of the rhetoric of things that we read is it all sort of comes back to impossibility and barriers and roadblocks. And so I think that so many people enter this field with a deficit mindset that some things can't be done, and things can't be fixed, and that every child can't achieve and every child can't read. And I think that what the military has given me is the mindset of that actually, if you believe that you can do something and it will happen, I think that it's possible in education. And that's how I have always approached my job as a teacher, my job as an adjunct professor, and even in my duties as a grad student here at Penn. I think that just going back to what you said also about taking care of your soldiers and taking care of your students, I really did think that teaching would be vastly different than taking care of soldiers, and it's not much difference. Even when you teach 3-year-olds as opposed to teaching adults, it's really not that much of a difference. And not to infantilize my students, but I'm thinking more broadly about just the care. I bring that with me in my teaching with adults. I want my students to know that, of course, I have to be proficient and knowledgeable of the content that I'm responsible for giving them in their course. But to be transparent at my core, I believe that our most important job as teachers is to care. I believe that our work is so relational. Our students come with they come with so many different experiences, so many different things that happen to them in their lives, whether they're 3 years old, whether they're 30. There's an opportunity for us to learn from one another. And I just carry with me the same love and care and leadership that I had for my soldiers. I have the same thing for my students. And I know that came from my military background.
And one thing that I found, and I would imagine you found this too, when your battalion commander in your first assignment gave you all of these additional duties, that I've never been afraid to take on something new, even though I didn't know anything about it. Okay, what's the responsibility of a mess officer or a motor pool officer and whatnot? Military people, I have found, are always ready to jump in and learn that new job. They'll go to the manuals and find out what they have to do. And that's, I think, a valuable experience from the service. I'm going to ask you a leading question, Daris, about volunteering. And the idea is that you mentioned many times that volunteering was part of your desire to give back. And so you're giving of yourself to the students, the children, and whatever volunteering work you're doing. My own experience has found is that you not only give, but you receive when you do this. There's a lot that you gain through this volunteering experience in your own personal development. Is that fair for you?
That's a great question. I would absolutely agree. I think beyond the benefits of bringing your ideas and your talents to a space in service of others, I think you learn so much from the experience itself. I think in different capacities. I think that volunteering in Petersburg really gave me a sense of purpose and direction because I didn't know. I knew that I wanted to transition out of the military. I just didn't know in what capacity. And then with volunteering at the Homeless Children's Playtime Project, that was an experience that led me to want to volunteer in Kenya and to see poverty and transitional housing in a different light. And then here, volunteering with the Philly Reading Coaches, this gives me an insight to some of the things children may experience outside of school that could be a barrier to their reading or even like their love for reading. I think that volunteer experiences really bring out parts of our character that we didn't even know were there, especially when the days when you're just a little tired or you may get an invite to hang out with a certain person or go to happy hour or to do something like go see a movie, but you've made a commitment to give to others. So I think also just the element of sacrifice and thinking about why you start something in the first place, it really gave me a sense of what it means to really, really give up your own time for other people and why you do it. And then I would say the last part is doing it for the sake of the service itself and not just to post a selfie on social media so that other people can like it and praise you for the service, but doing things, doing good, when others aren't looking, when it's not on display. I live by that, not just in giving back, but also in my professional and my personal lives. Just doing good by others and doing right by others, even when you're not acknowledged for it.
There is no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. That was one of my boss's messages to me many years ago, and I have found that to be so true. I'd like to get your ideas and thoughts about the importance of early childhood education. One of the subjects of the new administration, one of the goals, I think, is pursuing something like universal pre-K education. How important is that in your experience?
I 100% think that universal pre-K is long overdue. In early childhood classrooms, I've been so fortunate to be around the most brilliant, the most curious, the most innovative people in the world, and those are 3-year-olds. And I think that early childhood education provides an opportunity for kids to express themselves, for kids to question the world. And I always say to my students, every chance I get, never stop asking why. Never stop asking why. Always ask why. Why leads to new ideas, and why leads to new philosophies and new practices and new ways of doing. And in early childhood classrooms, this is an opportunity for us to really bring these experiences out of our kids with one another. They are afforded the ability and the opportunity to collaborate with other kids. During my year teaching 3-year-olds, one of our kids asked, why does something like a block sink in water? And why does something like a ball of paper float? And that turned into a big unit of study on buoyancy, why things sink and float. And that didn't come from me or from my teaching team. It came from a child. And with early childhood classrooms, we have the flexibility to do things like that, where we're not confined to a curriculum with standards based on like the milestones of like what level kids should be reading at by what age, because they're so young. And we're able to cultivate a space where kids can bring in ideas and other concepts. And also, frankly, childcare is a really big issue. The cost of childcare in this country has been an issue for a very long time. And I think that universal pre-K can help to offset that, beginning with age 2. If we can create a space where parents don't have to pay for their kids to come to a school as early as 2. This is a way to provide a service to parents who may find the cost of childcare to be overwhelming.
We advertise ourselves as a nation that offers equal opportunity, not equal outcome. But that equal opportunity has to begin with education at the earliest stages. And I would actually very much endorse what you've said there. Well, we've been talking today with Daris McInnis as today's profile in service. Daris, you gave Uncle Sam 5 years in military service. That certainly qualifies you as a veteran. Your volunteer activities are way too numerous to summarize here. And again, my personal belief is that next to national defense, service as an educator in our public schools has to rank pretty high as well. So I'm going to close this, Daris, by saying thank you for your service as a veteran. Thank you for your service as a volunteer. And thank you for your service as an educator of the future generation of young children. That's all for this episode of Profiles in Service. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and are looking forward to your joining us again for the next episode as we continue our discussion of service in all of its many forms. Until then, this is General Alan Salisbury saying thank you for listening. Thank you, Daris.
Thank you, General Salisbury.
This podcast is powered by and copyright of the Coda Support Foundation. Coda Support presents Profiles in Service is hosted by Major General Alan B. Salisbury and produced by Carly Van Tassel. The opinions of the guests on the show do not directly reflect the stance of the Coda Support Foundation. To learn more about Coda Support, please visit www.codasupport.org or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Finally, if you or someone you know is a service member, veteran, caregiver, or military family member in need of assistance, please visit codasupport.org/get-help or create a free account at patriotlink.org.